Today we're talking isometric RPGs, those fantastic top-down role-playing games. I've put together a list of some of the absolute best ones out there, games you seriously need to play, so let's look at the first one. Planescape Torment.
You know, I've learned some new tricks.
So if we're talking isometric RPGs, like the real deal top-down old school deep dive kind of stuff, Planescape Torment is one of those games that straight up defines the genre. It's not just some random classic people throw around to sound cool. You play as this immortal dude called the Nameless One. He's basically been around forever but keeps forgetting who the hell he is, so the game kicks off with you waking up in a damn morgue, and it just gets wilder from there. And trust me, the setting is not your usual medieval fantasy with elves and goblins and whatever. This is Planescape. It's gritty, it's philosophical, it's kinda gross at times, and it's full of bizarre places that feel like they were pulled straight from some fever dream. Now, I'm not gonna lie, this game's super heavy on dialogue, like a lot of it, but the writing is fire. It actually makes you care about what people say, and your choices matter in ways you don't expect. It's less about fighting and more about thinking, talking, exploring, and just soaking in that world. And yeah, the isometric style, it nails that old school CRPG vibe, where you're clicking around, digging through dialogue trees, and planning your every move from that top-down view. So yeah, if you're down for a slower paced but super rich and meaningful RPG that really leans into that classic isometric style, like you're reading a damn fantasy novel but you're in control, Planescape Torment is a must.
This much fun since the last time.
Damn. Been warped.
Disco Elysium, the final cut. If you like isometric RPGs and want something that does everything the normal RPG rules can't, then Disco Elysium, the final cut, is the game for you. Imagine being a cop in a mad city where you don't remember who you are and have to figure out why someone's dead. First things first, no wizards, no elves, no dungeons. This game takes place in a war-torn city named Revachol, and you're a detective who wakes up in some piece of crap hotel room with a killer hangover and no memory of what happened the night before. You're caught up in this giant mess of personal demons, a crashed career, and a murder case where you can't even recall opening the file. The best part is the entire game is talking. I mean serious talking, not talk to NPC for side quest type. You'll be talking a lot to the folks in the city, and I mean everybody, from the cranky bartender to some random dude on the street who thinks you're crazy. You get to decide how much of a mess you want to make of this guy's life. Now, here's the thing. Disco Elysium doesn't feature all the usual RPG stuff like combat, level ups, or loot grabbing. Nope, not at all. The game is all about making choices that actually have a weight to them. You've got this whole set of skills, things like intellect, empathy, authority, and you'll use them to solve the case and untangle your own messed up life. Depending on what you choose, your character can turn out to be a suave professional detective or a total train wreck who can barely keep his crap together. It's up to you. The isometric view is the way to go for this game. The camera angle gives you a good little bird's eye view of the city, and you can click around to see the streets, talk to people, peer down dirty alleys, and get more of the story. You can see different areas of the city and go out, and the world is colorful. You won't be fighting monsters or anything, but you will feel like every action you take, every conversation you have is getting you closer to something important.
On the sea.
Divinity Original Sin 2. This game is a freaking masterpiece, and it's everything you could want in a deep, tactical, story-driven RPG. So imagine a world where magic is super powerful and dangerous, and the people who wield it are treated like criminals. You play as a sorcerer, someone who can use magic, and you're thrown into a world of chaos. At the start of the game, you're stuck on a ship headed for a prison island because, well, you're a magic user and the authorities want to lock you up. But surprise, things go way worse, and soon you find yourself in the middle of a huge conflict that could change the fate of the entire world. The thing that sets Divinity Original Sin 2 apart from other RPGs is the combat system. It's turn-based, sure, but it's tactical in an amazing way. You've got all these different skills and magic spells, and they don't just look cool, they interact with the environment and each other in crazy ways. You can set stuff on fire, freeze enemies in place, electrify puddles of water, or even summon a freaking dragon to rain hell down on your enemies. The possibilities are endless, and the strategy involved is so rewarding. Every fight feels like a puzzle you need to solve, and it's honestly one of the most fun combat systems I've ever played. And then there's the world building. The story of Divinity Original Sin 2 is rich, detailed, and packed with twists and turns. You'll encounter a ton of factions, characters, and locations, all with their own agendas. The writing is top-notch, and there's so many layers to uncover. From epic quests to side stories that are just as important, you'll get lost in the world for hours, maybe even days. Baldur's Gate 3. Okay, if we're discussing isometric RPGs, then Baldur's Gate 3 is the one that's been all the buzz, and for good reason. This one takes all that was good with the original Baldur's Gate series and turns it up to an all-new level, and trust me, it knocks it out of the park in almost every way imaginable. So the game starts out with your character infected with a mind flayer tadpole, basically a nasty little creature that's trying to turn you into one of those nasty brain-munching abominations. But here's the twist. You're not overwhelmed right away, you instead gain some wacky powers and have to struggle to survive, trying to come up with a means of killing this parasite before it takes complete control of you. Not bad, huh? But that's where the game truly excels. Choice. Like, this isn't a game where you're on some blind path, no way, this is one where every decision matters. Big time, you can be good, bad, or somewhere in between, and your decisions make a difference. Who you socialize with, how you get out of trouble, what quests you take, and how the entire world around you reacts, it all hinges on what you do. It's like you're creating your own story, and that's one of the most fulfilling things about Baldur's Gate 3. Now let's discuss the combat where the Dungeons & Dragons comes in. If you've ever played D&D, you'll feel right at home. The game employs D&D 5th edition rules, so you've got turn-based combat that's both tactical and deep. It's not all about bashing your way through everything though. You've got to think ahead, use your abilities well, and really utilize your terrain. Want to set up a trap with the terrain? You can. Want to pick away at an enemy group from a distance with a well-placed spell? That's up to you. It's all about strategy, and man, when you execute a flawless plan, it feels so damn good. But what truly makes this game stand out is the freedom. Want to take the straight and narrow and play through the main story? Be my guest. But if you're feeling something else, and let's be honest, who isn't, you can do something entirely different. You can skip a whole lot of quests or even wipe out an entire faction if you want to. The world is open and you can do whatever you want with it.
Blesses me this day. Together, we might survive.
Wasteland 3. This one's got everything you could want if you're into tactical, turn-based combat, deep storylines, and tough choices that actually matter. Set in a post-apocalyptic world, Wasteland 3 picks up where its predecessors left off, putting you in the shoes of the Desert Rangers, an elite group tasked with trying to restore order to a world that's long gone to hell. But this isn't just about survival, it's about making hard decisions with no easy answers. You'll have to navigate a world full of betrayals, politics, and moral gray areas, where every action you take impacts the fate of the people around you. So let's talk about the story, because it's what sets Wasteland 3 apart. The game kicks off with a mission to the frozen wastelands of Colorado, where you're sent to support a local warlord named the Patriarch. Sounds simple enough, right? Well, turns out things aren't as they seem. You're dragged into a mess of family drama, shifting alliances, and political intrigue, and suddenly, you've got to figure out who to trust and who's trying to screw you over. It's like an RPG version of a Game of Thrones political drama, with even more bullets and explosions. The choices you make in Wasteland 3 can completely alter the course of the game. You're not just picking between good and evil. Sometimes it's about choosing the lesser of two evils, or deciding between two equally messed up options. Do you help one faction even though they're clearly shady, or do you side with a rival that might end up screwing you over later? You'll constantly be asked to make tough calls that will affect everything from your character's relationships with companions to the fate of entire towns. It's one of those games that really makes you think about the consequences of your actions. Now, the combat is classic turn-based, and for people who love tactical gameplay, it's a treat. You've got your squad of rangers, each with their own unique abilities and skills. You can customize your team to fit your playstyle, whether you want to go for brute force or a more stealthy approach. The battles are strategic, and it's all about positioning, using cover, and taking advantage of your enemy's weaknesses. You'll want to think a few steps ahead because one wrong move could mean the difference between life and death for your squad. The isometric view is perfect for the type of tactical gameplay Wasteland 3 offers. You get a great view of the battlefield, and the detailed environments let you scope out all the different ways you can approach situations. Plus, it just looks awesome. The environments are gritty and atmospheric, and even though you're in a destroyed world, the attention to detail makes it feel alive in its own twisted way. The humor in Wasteland 3 also deserves a shout out. While the game's world is dark and unforgiving, it doesn't take itself too seriously all the time. There's plenty of dry humor and snarky dialogue, and some of the situations you find yourself in are downright ridiculous. It keeps things fresh and stops the game from getting too bogged down in its grim setting.
Communist.
Pillars of Eternity 2 Deadfire. Well, if you're looking for an isometric RPG that combines deep, immersive storytelling with rich lore and a world that feels alive, then Pillars of Eternity 2 Deadfire is absolutely worth checking out. It's a direct sequel to Pillars of Eternity, and it takes everything the first game did right and just bumps it up even more. The story kicks off right after the events of the first game, and you're once again in the shoes of the Watcher, a character who can see and communicate with souls. This time though, things are a little more personal. Your main mission is to track down a rogue god, Eothas, who's wreaked some serious havoc. Not only are you out to stop a god from causing chaos, but you're also exploring the mysteries of your own past and the very nature of the world you live in. The first thing you'll notice about Deadfire is how much freedom it gives you. The game's world is expansive, with multiple islands to explore and a huge variety of factions to interact with. You're not just following one linear path. This is a game where your choices matter. Want to take the moral high ground and save everyone? Or maybe you'd prefer to throw caution to the wind and let chaos reign. Either way, you'll face consequences, and Deadfire does a fantastic job of making those choices feel significant. Now, let's talk exploration, because that's where Deadfire really stands out. The world is open and dynamic, with islands and ships to explore, and there's a whole seafaring element to the game. You get your own ship, and you'll be sailing across the ocean, dealing with pirates, making alliances, and fighting sea monsters. The ship-to-ship combat is a fun, tactical twist that adds a lot of depth to the exploration. There's nothing like getting into a heated sea battle, using your ship's cannons, and feeling like the captain of your own destiny. Another highlight of Deadfire is the narrative writing. The dialogue is top-notch, and the game has a lot of that classic Pillars of Eternity charm where the writing is rich with history and lore, the world feels fleshed out, and you get a real sense of place. Whether you're talking to a mysterious merchant in a back alley or having a deep conversation with one of your companions, the writing pulls you in and makes you feel connected to the world. Now, this game isn't for the faint of heart. It's definitely on the more challenging side, and it can sometimes feel like a grind, especially when it comes to exploring the world and managing your resources, but for fans of deep, old-school RPGs, that's part of the charm. It's a game that demands your attention, but if you're into immersive storytelling and strategic combat, the payoff is totally worth it. Pathfinder: Wrath of the Righteous. This game offers one of the most detailed, deep, and rewarding experiences you'll find in the genre, and it does so while giving you plenty of freedom to shape your own destiny. The story centers around an epic war between good and evil, with demons invading the world of Golarion. You, the player, take on the role of the commander of the Crusade, a military force trying to stop the demon invasion. Right from the start, you're thrown into a chaotic, world-ending conflict, but what makes the story really special is how your choices determine the outcome of the war and your character's fate. It's a classic tale of light versus dark, but with so much more to chew on, especially when you factor in the morally complex choices you'll have to make. One of the best parts of Wrath of the Righteous is the character creation. The game offers so much customization that you'll find yourself spending a solid chunk of time at the start just building your character. You get to pick your race, class, and abilities, but you can also choose an ascended path, which is essentially a class-specific upgrade that turns your character into something entirely unique. You could become an angelic figure, a demon yourself, or even tap tap into divine power, all of which come with special abilities and powers that change the way you play. It's a lot of fun to experiment with different combinations, and the flexibility really allows you to tailor your playstyle to your liking. The combat in Wrath of the Righteous is a mix of real-time and turn-based strategy. When you're in the heat of battle, you can control each character's actions, moving them around the battlefield and using their special abilities, but it also gives you the option to pause and plan your moves, especially in tougher fights. There's a ton of depth in the combat system with a huge range of abilities and synergies between your characters, so you'll need to think ahead to get the upper hand. If you're someone who enjoys turn-based RPGs with a high level of tactical depth, then this is right up your alley. What really makes Wrath of the Righteous stand out, though, is how story-driven it is. The game feels like it's packed with content that feels meaningful, not just filler. You'll encounter tons of side quests that can alter the course of the main story, and the world building is rich and intricate. The world of Golarion is absolutely huge and feels like a living, breathing place. The locations you visit are diverse and beautifully crafted, from ruined cities to magical forests, all rendered in stunning isometric graphics. The art direction is top-notch, and it's clear a lot of thought was put into making each area feel unique and visually striking. The design of the game gives you that satisfying old-school RPG vibe, but with modern polish, and it has that perfect mix of nostalgia and freshness.
And you? What has brought you?
On top of all of that, the game has some of the most difficult and challenging combat in the genre. The difficulty is no joke, and if you're not prepared for battles, you'll find yourself reloading a lot. That might be a turnoff for some, but for hardcore RPG fans who enjoy a challenge, it's definitely a plus. The key to success is preparation, making sure your party is balanced, knowing your enemies, and taking advantage of every little trick you have up your sleeve. The game rewards you for taking the time to plan and experiment with different strategies. One thing to note is that Wrath of the Righteous can be overwhelming at times, especially if you're not used to isometric RPGs with a lot of moving parts. There's a lot of systems to learn, and it might take you a while to get the hang of everything, but if you enjoy deep, mechanically rich games, this will feel like a dream come true. Tyranny.
You lie, cheat.
Let's talk about Tyranny, a game that's often a bit overlooked but deserves a place in every isometric RPG lover's library. If you're someone who loves a game that turns the typical fantasy RPG formula on its head, then Tyranny is something you absolutely need to check out. Right off the bat, the premise of Tyranny is different from what you'd expect. Imagine a world where evil has already won. The typical good versus evil conflict? Nah, that's already played out. In Tyranny, the overlord, Kairos, has conquered the entire world, and now it's up to you to figure out how to live or die in a world where the bad guys have all the power. You play as a fate binder and enforcer of Kairos law, and your job is to bring order to the world, or, wreak havoc and stir up trouble if you're in the mood for that. This game doesn't just give you the usual hero's journey you see in most RPGs. Instead, you're the one upholding tyranny. The plot really digs deep into moral ambiguity, forcing you to decide what kind of person you want to be. Do you follow orders like a good soldier, or do you question the system and risk everything? There are no real good choices here, just a bunch of shades of gray. The choices you make are genuinely impactful and can completely change the way the story plays out.
During my time as a chorus prisoner, I heard...
Now, let's talk about the gameplay. The combat in Tyranny is your classic isometric real-time with pause style, just like the old-school RPGs like Baldur's Gate and Planescape Torment. The real hook here, though, is how flexible the combat system is. You get to build your character from the ground up, choosing from a variety of classes, and you can further shape them through abilities that let you take on a bunch of different roles. Whether you want to be a tank, a spellcaster, or a support character, Tyranny lets you customize your hero exactly the way you want. But what really sets Tyranny apart is how it lets you influence the world around you. The game is filled with factions, and the choices you make will affect your standing with them. Want to side with the rebels and fight for freedom? Cool, but that might piss off the local military faction. Or maybe you decide to stay loyal to Kairos forces and suppress the weak? That'll have consequences too. Your decisions affect how the world reacts, and there's no going back once you make your call. It's not just about good vs evil, it's about choosing your alliances and figuring out which side of the law you want to stand on. If you're into rich world building, you'll love the setting in Tyranny. The world feels alive, and there's a deep lore to uncover, from the lands that have already fallen under Kairos' rule to the factions that still fight for power. The game does an excellent job of making everything feel lived in and real. Even the cities and towns are filled with political intrigue, and there's always something going on behind the scenes. Plus, the art direction is top-notch, with beautifully designed environments and detailed character models that make the world feel unique.
As the final conquest draws near,
You lie, cheat, and steal, twisting everything around you for your bottomless ambition.
Warhammer 40k Inquisitor Martyr. If you're into Warhammer 40k and you've been looking for an action-packed, isometric RPG that mixes fast-paced combat with a dark, gritty universe, then Warhammer 40k Inquisitor Martyr should be on your radar. This game isn't just about lore, it's about diving headfirst into the Warhammer 40k universe and getting your hands dirty, taking on the role of an Inquisitor as you hunt down the forces of chaos, uncover dark conspiracies, and fight to save the Imperium of Man from all kinds of grim horrors. First things first, the setting. Warhammer 40k Inquisitor Martyr is set in the vast, dystopian future of the Warhammer 40k universe, and if you're familiar with it, you know it's a place full of war, corruption, and unrelenting darkness. You play as an Inquisitor, an agent of the Emperor tasked with rooting out the enemies of mankind. The cool thing about being an Inquisitor is that you've got the power to investigate, interrogate, and just wreck shit when it comes down to it. You're not just some soldier, you're a force of nature, carrying out missions that require tactical thinking, heavy combat, and all-around badassery. The gameplay is a mix of action RPG elements with that signature Warhammer feel. It's a top-down, isometric view where you'll navigate through a range of environments from creepy space stations to derelict ships, all while facing off against hordes of enemies. Whether you're fighting chaos cultists, Xenos, or the heretical forces that threaten the galaxy, combat in Inquisitor Martyr is satisfying and fast. The controls are tight, and you can expect to be shooting, slashing, and using powerful psychic abilities to mow down enemies. One of the game's biggest selling points is the variety of playstyles available. You get to choose your class, and each class comes with its own unique abilities. Want to be a psyker and wield the power of the warp? You can do that. Maybe you want to go with a veteran warrior using heavy guns and armor to bulldoze through enemies? That's an option too. Each class feels completely different, and you can customize your character to match your preferred playstyle, whether that's going in guns blazing or using tactics and strategy to get the upper hand. It's all about choosing how you want to tackle the chaos. The game also has a loot system, which is pretty common in RPGs but works really well here. You'll be collecting all kinds of gear as you progress, weapons, armor, and relics that help enhance your character and make you more powerful. The gear is customizable too, so you can tweak your weapons and armor to fit your playstyle. This is great because you get to constantly feel like you're growing stronger and becoming more prepared to face the next wave of enemies. Plus, it just feels satisfying to find that rare powerful weapon that turns you into an unstoppable force of nature. In terms of story, Inquisitor Martyr delivers a pretty engaging narrative. The plot revolves around your investigation into the mysterious Martyr, a fallen Imperial battleship, and the dark secrets it hides. You'll be uncovering corruption, battling enemies, and dealing with various factions and their agendas. The story feels a bit more grounded compared to some of the more epic, larger-than-life Warhammer stories, but it's still got that grimdark tone that Warhammer 40k fans love. There are also tons of side quests and activities to keep you busy, giving you plenty of opportunities to dive deeper into the lore of the universe. What I love about Inquisitor Martyr is how it captures the essence of Warhammer 40k while still giving you the freedom to play it like an RPG. There's a lot of fan service here for people who already love the universe, but the game also does a solid job of bringing new players into the fold without completely overwhelming them. The visuals are also top-notch with detailed environments, enemies, and the dark, industrial aesthetic of the Warhammer universe all coming through in full force. The game has a gritty, atmospheric feel, and it really helps immerse you in the universe's sense of hopelessness and constant war. Path of Exile. Now, this is one of the most popular ones, and it's actually free, so you don't pay a cent to get into it, but it feels like a full-on premium experience with more depth than most paid games out there. Let's start with the vibe. This ain't some colorful, friendly RPG. Path of Exile throws you into the grim world of Rayclast, which is basically a cursed, rotting continent where criminals and outcasts are dumped to die. You're basically trying to survive in a world that's constantly trying to kill you, with monsters, demons, cults, corrupted gods, you name it. Now, the thing that really makes Path of Exile stand out in the isometric RPG space is the insane amount of build customization. I'm not even kidding, this game gives you so much freedom it's kind of overwhelming at first. You start by picking a class, but then it just explodes from there. You've got this massive, galaxy-sized passive skill tree, no joke, it looks like a freaking star map, and you can go wild with how you build your character. Want to be a fire-throwing witch with tanky armor? Go for it. Want to make a lightning-based melee fighter who leeches life like a vampire? That's totally doable. But it doesn't stop there. Your skills themselves come from gems, like actual items you slot into your gear. So instead of learning spells from a menu, you find or trade for skill gems and then link them with support gems to modify how they work. You can literally turn a basic fireball into this massive chain exploding, screen clearing attack just by linking the right stuff. It's deep, man, and super addictive once you get into it. Gameplay wise, Path of Exile plays like your classic action RPG. You've got that top-down camera, click to move control, and you're just blasting through enemies like a one-person army. The combat feels satisfying, especially once your build starts coming together and you're mowing down mobs in seconds. There's also a heavy focus on loot, like a lot of loot. You'll constantly be picking up weapons, armor, currency items, crafting materials, everything. If you like that feeling of finding rare, god-tier gear that takes your build to the next level, this game nails it. And even though it's free, the monetization is super fair. It's mostly cosmetics and extra stash tabs. Nothing pay to win, which is honestly refreshing in today's market. Torchlight 2. Let's switch gears for a sec, because Torchlight 2 is one of those isometric RPGs that just feels good to play. Like, if Path of Exile is the dark, gritty, hardcore cousin, Torchlight 2 is the colorful, fast-paced, chill cousin who still absolutely knows how to bring the heat. It's fun, it's accessible, and it's one of the best entry points into the isometric ARPG world, especially if you don't want to get buried in spreadsheets right away. So, what's the vibe? Imagine a cartoonish fantasy world full of magic, steampunk gadgets, weird creatures, and giant bosses. It's got this bright, colorful art style that almost looks like a mix between Saturday morning cartoons and Diablo-style gameplay. And even though it looks all cute and quirky on the surface, don't let that fool you. Torchlight 2 has solid combat, satisfying loot, and some legit character building underneath the hood. You start by picking one of 4 classes, each with their own skill trees and play styles. There's the Engineer, who's basically the tanky bruiser with gadgets and giant hammers. Then you've got the Outlander, a kind of gunslinger/ranger hybrid. The Berserker is your up-close melee monster, and the Ember Mage is the flashy spellcaster who can nuke stuff from across the screen. All of them feel super different, and you can spec them in different directions depending on how you want to play. And honestly, the combat just feels freaking good. You're constantly smashing enemies, setting off huge explosions, dropping crits, and scooping up piles of loot. It's got that same addictive loop that made Diablo 2 so iconic: kill, loot, upgrade, repeat, but with a bit more color and a way more laid-back feel. It's perfect if you want that ARPG experience without getting too sweaty about min-maxing every little step. Now, if you're coming from something super heavy like Divinity or Baldur's Gate, just know Torchlight 2 leans way more into action and loot than deep storytelling. The plot is there, sure, but it's kind of just background noise for the fun. But, I mean, yeah, that's part of its charm. Sometimes you just want to chill, smash monsters, and see your screen light up with loot drops, and this game is perfect for that. It's aged really well, too. Still runs smooth, still looks great in its own stylized way, and the modding community is still alive and kicking. You can add custom classes, maps, new gear, and all kinds of wild stuff if you want to spice things up even more. Grim Dawn. This one's for the folks who love that dark, gritty vibe with deep builds, tight combat, and endless loot. It's like someone looked at Diablo 2 and Titan Quest and said, yo, what if we made this even more intense, but also gave players way more control over their characters? And yeah, that's pretty much what you get here. The second you fire it up, you know you're in for something a little more hardcore. The setting is this post-apocalyptic world where humanity's basically on the edge, and you're just dropped into the middle of it with a rusty weapon and a reason to wreck everything that moves. It's dark, it's brutal, and the atmosphere is thick, like really thick, the kind of game where the fog and rain almost feel like part of the combat. Now, as an isometric RPG, this one's more on the action RPG side, but it's packed with all the crunchy stuff you want. Skill trees, gear stats, resistances, debuffs, damage types, the whole deal. And the class system is wild. Instead of just picking one class and locking it in, you can actually combine two. So you start with a base class like Soldier, Demolitionist, Occultist, and then later you pick a second one to mix with it. That gives you dozens of crazy combinations, like a fire blasting tank, a poison summoner, or a dual-wielding shadow assassin. The theory crafting here is next level. But here's the thing, Grim Dawn doesn't just throw you into chaos and hope you figure it out, it eases you in just enough to learn the ropes, then slowly opens up into this giant interconnected world with tons of side quests, faction choices, secrets, and even reputation systems. And the loot? Freaking addictive. There's always a better sword, a cooler gun, or a crazier set bonus just around the corner. You'll be swapping out gear constantly, and it never gets old. The game feels super satisfying moment to moment. The combat hits hard, the enemies explode into giblets, and your character just gets more badass as you go. Whether you're dropping meteor storms on skeletons or slicing through zombies with dual axes, everything has weight and flash, and it runs smooth even on older rigs. Another thing worth shouting out is how damn complete this game feels. You're not getting some half-baked RPG with content locked behind DLC walls. The base game alone is massive, and if you grab the expansions like Ashes of Malmouth and Forgotten Gods, you're easily looking at 100 plus hours of quality gameplay. And it never feels like filler. Every area, every dungeon, every boss has its own little flavor. Neverwinter Nights 2. The game throws a ton of stats, skills, and dice roll mechanics at you, but once you get the hang of it, it's actually super rewarding. The amount of freedom you get when building your character is nuts. Want to play as a sorcerer with crazy AoE spells, or maybe a sneaky rogue that talks their way out of everything? Totally doable. Now the story, it's a classic small town nobody becomes the chosen one kind of deal, but it's done pretty well. You start off as this random orphan in a quiet village, and things go south real quick. There's war, ancient relics, secret identities, a shady court trial, all that good fantasy stuff. And yeah, it's a slow burn in the beginning, but later chapters really step it up, especially when you start making those big moral choices.
The people of Ember didn't fight back.
Also, this game gives you a full party, like Baldur's Gate style. You're not just rolling solo here, you'll recruit a whole group of companions with their own personalities, banter, side quests, and drama. Some of them are kinda annoying, in a good way, some are just plain cool, but they all add flavor to the adventure. You also get to build up your own stronghold later on, which adds a whole new layer of strategy and choice. Feels like you're actually running something important, not just reacting to the world. Combat-wise, it's real-time with pause, so it's kinda like setting up a game of chess mid-battle. You gotta pause, issue commands, manage spells, make sure your squishies don't get wrecked. It's not exactly casual, but it's fun once you get the rhythm. The engine can be clunky, especially when you're dealing with camera angles and pathfinding, but it's also moddable as hell. There's tons of community content, new campaigns, tweaks. You could be playing this thing for years if you fall into the modding rabbit hole. So yeah, Neverwinter Nights 2 ain't the easiest game to get into, and sure, it's not perfect, but if you want that classic D&D style isometric RPG experience with rich party dynamics and a big branching story, this one still holds up. Just give it a little time to get going and you might end up totally hooked. Exanima. This one's all about atmosphere, physics, and brutal, no-nonsense gameplay. It throws you into this cold, dark dungeon with barely any explanation and just lets you figure everything out on your own, and honestly, that's part of what makes it so cool. The first thing you'll notice is how weird and clunky the controls feel at first. Like, you're not just pressing attack and watching a canned animation, you actually swing your weapon using your mouse, and it's all physics-based, so every fight feels kinda unpredictable, awkward at times, but also super satisfying once you start understanding how to move and strike properly. It's like learning to walk again, but in the middle of a deadly medieval brawl. Now, is it an RPG? Technically, yeah, just not in the usual sense. There are skills you level up, gear you collect, and some light character progression, but there's no traditional leveling system or dialogue trees. The focus here is more on survival and learning through trial and error. The world has this dark, gritty, almost depressing tone to it, like you really feel like you're stuck in some ancient, forgotten hellhole trying to stay alive. There's also a weird, deep lore hidden in item descriptions, books, and subtle environmental details, but the game doesn't hand it to you. You gotta want to piece things together, and even then, it keeps you guessing. If you're someone who likes games that give you zero hand-holding and just toss you into the fire, this might be your jam. Sands of Salzaar. On the surface, it appears to be yet another indie isometric RPG, but the longer you play it, the more you appreciate how freaking deep it really is. It's as if they took Mount & Blade, a dash of old-school RPG nostalgia, and some Eastern fantasy, put them all in a blender, and somehow made it work. You start off by picking a class, and there are quite a few weird and interesting ones, not just your usual knight or mage stuff. Each class actually plays super differently, so right from the jump, you're customizing your whole playstyle. Then you're tossed into this big open desert world that honestly feels kinda alive. Factions are fighting, bandits are roaming, cities rise and fall based on who's winning battles. It's got that sandbox anarchy where you can do whatever you want, whether that's ruling as a warlord, maintaining peace as a peacekeeper, or just walking around doing odd jobs and expanding your squad. The fighting is real time and is slightly more action oriented than most games here. You're not just sitting there taking turns, you're rolling, casting, and swinging in real time while your army bulldozes into enemy lines. It's big, it's messy, and it's awesome when everything is going off. It's what makes Sands of Salzaar so amazing. You begin with nothing and gradually build this legend in the world. The choices you make count, but not in the cinematic, you save the puppy or let the puppy die sort of sense, but like, do you fight with this faction, rescue this city, stab your mates in the back? It's political, it's messy, and it's a blast of hell. If you're in the mood for a relaxing, story-centric RPG, this isn't that, but if you're up for a large, unapologetic desert romp in which you create your own way and go wild, Sands of Salzaar more than merits a try. Bastard Bonds. Alright, Bastard Bonds is definitely one of the most unique isometric RPGs out there. Like, seriously, there's nothing quite like it. If you're cool with pixel art, dark fantasy, and a game that does not hold your hand at all, this one might just surprise the hell out of you. You start the game as a prisoner. Yeah, you're locked up. And you break out with the help of someone even more dangerous than you. Right off the bat, you know this ain't your typical hero saves the world kind of RPG. It's more like bad guys doing even worse things to other bad guys. But somehow, you end up caring about these messed up characters. Combat's tactical, grid-based, and turn-based, but also pretty fast-paced. You move your party around the map like a strategy RPG, you know. Now, this game is definitely not for everyone. It's unapologetically mature, it leans into adult themes, and visually, let's just say it's not afraid to be bold. But the crazy part is, under all that edginess, there's actually a smart, well-built RPG system here with real depth. There's character recruitment, relationship mechanics, and some surprisingly emotional moments tucked in between the blood and chaos. The Days Long Gone. Okay, 7 The Days Long Gone is a game that falls short of being loved, basically. It's got the whole post-apocalyptic thing you'd find plenty in games, but with an actual twist. Just imagine an open-world, real-time RPG that features a dash of exploration, a dash of strategy, and a whole lot of survival mechanics. The narrative here is that you're a guy named Teriel, an inmate who finds himself waking up in a devastated world with no idea how you ended up there. The game takes place in a huge open world, hundreds of devastated cities, rotten forests, and hostile areas. You're not mindlessly traipsing around shooting things, however. There's heaps of scavenging, resource management, and attempting to survive in a world where literally everything is trying to kill you. It's merciless. The game's heavy on exploration and ensuring you've got a sufficient supply. You'll need to have food, water, ammunition, stuff you might not appreciate in other games. If you get too reckless or neglect planning, you'll be in a tight spot, which is a nice twist on the typical RPG formula. It makes you plan ahead of time, which is nice. And look, the graphics are not the most flashy, but they have a gritty, post-apocalyptic vibe. The landscapes are haunting and lovely in their own right, and the world feels inhabited. It's not too polished, but that helps the atmosphere as well. If you like deep tactical combat and a world that requires you to think twice before every move, 7 The Days Long Gone is well worth the time. It's not the most accessible game out there, but if you see it through, you'll discover a fascinating and difficult RPG that truly rewards patience and planning. It's a bit rough around the edges, but it's got good stuff in there.